Okay, guys, what's going on? So, I wanted to try something new, make a different form of content. One, because I really like to teach, actually. I really like teaching some of these methods, some of these theories of mine, and some of you are probably catching on. I also like to talk a lot, and some of you like to listen. So, what I'm going to attempt to do today is break down some ideas to make them very simple. One thing I've noticed when it comes to training athletes or training human beings is that it can be very complex, and there's a ton of information there on the internet. So what I want to attempt to do is to kind of create a model to help other people understand certain ideas when it comes to training. And then if I can make this idea seem a lot simpler, a lot more digestible, this can really help you filter out a lot of the noise and confusion that's kind of run rampant when it comes to like the fitness and sports performance training industry. All right, so let's start with the basics. Let's start with just a simple idea is, what is training? Okay, so for my handwriting, what is training? What actually is training? This is what I want to attempt to kind of break down, or at least my own interpretation of what it is that I'm seeing. Now, full disclosure, I am no scientist, all right? I am not a Harvard professor. I didn't even go to college, all right? I graduated high school with a 2.6 GPA, and I'm just some guy in Michigan that's really passionate about this stuff, and I want to try to figure out the truth when it comes to performance and how the human body expresses athletic movements. Okay, that is kind of like my goal. And so these are my own theories. All right, don't take anything that I say as fact. These are just the theories that I have. Hopefully it can help you, and it's helped me a lot, and it seems to produce some decent results. Okay, so what makes human beings different than any other animal in the whole animal kingdom is that we can artificially create our own stimulus. Artificial stimulation. That is the difference between us and every other animal. All right? And we have mastered this process of artificial stimulation. Now, most animals, usually when they evolve or they go through their life cycle, a lot of it is other species and the environment kind of attacking their nervous systems, which creates this stimulation that forces adaptation, survival, all these different mechanisms that we know. Like, say, for example, when you look at birds, right? They migrate south when the weather changes. And this is a way where the environment stimulates them to try to adapt how they move and how they live, how they go about their life cycle, so they can increase their chances of survival. All right, that is a form of natural stimulation, the environment stimulating onto them. Another form is look at male lions, the way they compete amongst each other. Like, why do male lions have a mane around their neck? It's to protect themselves from being killed by other lions, other male lions, all right? So they have this big, thick, hided fur pad around their neck, so when they fight and challenge each other, the chances of them killing each other drastically decrease. So it creates a feedback loop where men can compete more on the non-lethal side, at least males in some species, right? And that's species on species stimulation, right? Only the males who can grow good manes, good lion manes, they're able to survive competition, they're able to mate. Those baby lions carry the traits, so on and so forth, and evolved over millions of years, right? And that's why we got lions the way they look now. And this happens to every single animal species, even bacteria. But humans, right, we can artificially stimulate our bodies. Okay, so that brings me to the next area is, what are we trying to do with the stimulation? All right, now there's a bunch of different categories when it comes to training, but the basic expression of training is repeated adaptation. Okay, so Okay, another glitch. All right, repeated adaptation. That means doing something over and over and over again until the body adapts to the stimulation, usually adapting so the body is more efficient at repeating said action. Now, this can come in the form of mental training and physical training. All right, but essentially, it's artificial stimulation through repeated adaptation. That is what training kind of boils down to. Okay. So when we look at say like the body, right? So let's create like a person right here. Right, we got some legs. Okay, so we got a basic representation of the body. So what we're doing is we're hitting the body with different forms of stimulation. Now, we have 4 primary mechanisms that the human body can do, right? As a species, right? Like birds, one of their main mechanisms is that they can fly, right? That's like one of their primary mechanisms. Now, some birds have alternating mechanisms, like some can snatch fish out of water, so they have diving and grabbing abilities. Some birds don't do that, right? So there's all these different mechanisms that each species kind of hones in that's a part of its survival and life cycle. Human beings, we have 4 that I've been able to think of, all right? 4 primary ones that could be abstracted in all different forms of physical expression. And those are heavy carry. We can carry things for a very long distance, and we can pick things up that are very heavy. We can carry it. A lot of this came in the expression of carrying each other at long distances, especially babies and younger kids and toddlers. Another form of this expression is being able to pack and carry meat from a kill back to where your tribe or where your family is. So the mechanism to heavy carry is very important to human survival. All right, switch up the colors. Second mechanism. Sprint/jump. Okay? I hope you can see that okay. Sorry if it's not the most clear. But sprint jump, I kind of consider the same. Velocity movements. We're designed to move, well, not the fastest, but we can move fast if we have to. We can sprint, we can jump, we can cut angles. You know, we can move at velocity. We can be explosive when we need to. All right, and this comes in the form of actually closing in on, like, say, a kill, you know, or a potential human rival or something along those lines, where we can sprint, we can jump to evade possible threats. You know, like, say, like a fucking honey badger comes after your ankles while you're a primitive Homo habilis freaking man, and you're gonna wanna jump to get out of the way of that bitch and maybe stomp it down with a rock, right? A lot of this can also come in the form of, we'll kind of get into this one, but basically to move fast and explosive, right? Now that brings me to our third mechanism, and this is like a shared mechanism, I should add. So let's change the color again, because it's fun. Third mechanism, oh, hope you can see this okay. Throw/punch, okay? This is another shared mechanism because they revolve around the same biomechanics. So the reason I put throw/punch in there, for one, human beings, we can throw shit, all right? And we can throw shit pretty damn good. Like, you ever seen a professional baseball player or a cricket player? We can throw the fuck out of some shit. All right, now this also came in the form, like early survival expression, this came in the form of throwing objects at potential predators or oncoming predators. Usually we have to try to fight them away for a carcass, you know, back when we were Australopithecus or something like that. Or when it came to throwing a spear, you know, being able to hurl an object, a stone, a stick, a spear, a hand grenade. As it's kind of evolved, this has been a very essential tool for human beings. And the second one is punch. All right, if you look at, say, if I'm gonna throw something or I'm gonna punch something, you know, if I'm gonna punch like this or I'm gonna throw like this, it's a very similar biomechanic. All right, it runs along the same myofascial lines, same muscle groups, all that shit. So our ability to punch, in particularly for males, and that's why we have more upper body strength naturally than females, because we can compete through upper body punches, right? Just like how lions have the mane to keep themselves from killing each other off too fast, we have hard bony orbitals right around our head, all right? And this means that we can handle a ton of abuse. If you look at other primates, their orbitals are actually external, ours are internal. And the part of our head that is very dominant when it comes to thinking, problem solving, I would say the most advanced part of the brain is the prefrontal cortex. So that means most primates have a very flat forehead, like it kind of sinks like down, like this, it comes down, right? Our brain actually grew from the back and started growing in layers. First layer, second layer, third layer. Now, if we are able to absorb punches, you know, the monkeys that survive more blows to the head or can take more blows to the head, they have thicker bone around their skull. Those ones reproduced. That means their offspring had a little bit more thickness when it comes to the framing around the skull. And this is, guys, we're talking thousands of generations, not like 100. This didn't happen in 100 years. This took 1,000,000 fucking years, all right? That is a long time. World War I was like 110 years ago, okay? 1,000,000 years, dude, it took forever, but this is a repeated pattern. And so genetics spread forward, right? And as the primitive humans that were able to survive these upper body punches, the bone started to grow a little bit more forward, and it kind of created more of a shield. That's why we have this big, thick forehead, all right? Because it can handle damage, and only the human beings that had the thickest and most bony skulls that also would continually grow forward and adapt to the blows to the head, those genetic traits carried forward and also made space for more part of our brain to grow, the prefrontal cortex. All right? So, throw and punch, third mechanism that the human beings express from movements. Now, last one. Oh, let's go back to red. Running, aerobic energy system, long distance running, cardio. This is our fourth primary mechanism when it comes to our species survival. Now, running is extremely therapeutic on the human being. That's because it is one of the primary mechanisms to obtain food, to obtain mammalian calories. We had to persistence hunt. That means a motherfucker would maybe throw, or we would just run down an antelope at a pace that the antelope cannot cool its body down fast enough. Human beings have the ability to cool off. That is one of our superpowers. We can cool off, we can sweat, we can push heat and ventilate it out of our skin. Most animals can't do that because the amount of fur they have and because they're quadrupedal. We are bipedal, so that freed up our arms to take off a lot of tension and pressure off our rib cage, allowing us to be better oxygenative aerobic engines, aerobic bodies. Our nervous system can function, you know, and our feet. If you look at our feet look nothing like the other primates. We don't have handed feet. Our feet look like we had handed feet, and it was slowly evolving towards predatory feet, like a wolf or a cat. We were slowly developing predatory feet so we can travel and close distance on prey. All right, so running, cardio, this is one of the main mechanisms of the human being. So to recap, we got heavy carry, we have sprinting and jumping, we have throwing and punching, and we have running. Everything about a human being's physical expression will revolve around these four categories, as far as I've been able to think of. All right? And so what we're doing, bringing it back to what is training, is that we are artificially stimulating these mechanical expressions through a bunch of different ways. So heavy carry is like our strength, right? This is like weightlifting, strength training, okay? Sprint jumping, this could be like our plyometrics, our speed and agility. Well, I'm not gonna fit it all in there, but you can get it. This is like our plyometrics, our speed and agility training, right? Our ability to move fast. You know, being fast with the basketball. This falls under sprint jump. Throw a punch, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Any upper body movement at velocity, sports, we throw a ton of balls. Even shooting a basketball revolves around like doing this is the same mechanic as doing this. Shooting a basketball, throwing a punch. It's the same pattern of muscles and leverage. All right, so anything we're propelling things from the upper body has to do with this category. This one right here, throwing a punch, throwing a baseball, throwing a basket, shooting a basketball, whatever it is. And we have different ways to artificially stimulate this expression. Medicine balls, plyometric push-ups, bench press, all that shit, okay? And last one is running, our endurance. Now, it doesn't have to be bipedal running, right? All sports have an endurance mechanism to them for the most part, you know? Of course, there's some things like curling, right? Where there's not like an endurance mechanism, not really. Maybe a little bit, but let's kind of keep it kind of general. There's some nuance. Of course, there's always exceptions to the rule. But cardiovascular work is very important, and we have different ways where we artificially stimulate this mechanism. Now, we can really diversify how we artificially stimulate, you know, our energy system, our running, our cardio. There's row machines, there's ellipticals, you can get on some skis, you can fucking, you know, even rock climbing kind of taps into this category, you know, and maybe kind of blends in category 1 and category 2. And that's another weird thing. These categories can blend with each other. One can blend in with 3, right? Where say you're gonna throw something that's really heavy, like a 30-pound medicine ball, right? That's heavy carry and throw. You know, we call that power. So now, once we have these categories, what I'm trying to do is get you to understand what we're actually doing as a species with our body, all right? And we have artificial stimulation creates repeated adaptation, and the human body revolves around these mechanisms being more stimulated for better expression, all right? I hope that's making sense, because at least this is how my brain thinks of what it is that we're trying to do. And so what you can do with this model, right? When you can take the artificial stimulation, you know, falls into repeated adaptation, right? It's built out of these 4 categories, and these can be abstracted and even blended together and conjoined for the human body to express whatever these are. You know, it could come in many different forms of expression. Right? So what we're trying to do, so what we can do with this, I'm sorry, I'm getting all off topic. What we can do with this is now we can understand when we look at different training philosophies, right? Because there's a bunch of different training philosophies. There's powerlifting philosophies, there's bodybuilding philosophies, there's fitness philosophies, there's plyometric philosophies, right? There's speed and agility and quickness. There's like fascial training, there's TRX, there's all these different things we can do as far as creating artificial stimulation. And so when you're looking at a training philosophy, ask yourself, what are the primary mechanisms that this is trying to hit? From my experience, good training systems can hit all 4 simultaneously, right? And those usually are the most popular. That's why CrossFit became so dominant, because it hits all 4 categories at the same time in some sort of way. And so so you walk away feeling like you covered all your bases, right? That's very important for human beings. You know, that humans don't usually feel satisfied, not truly, when they just do cardio, but they don't do strength. And when you leave one of these categories out, the human body starts to run into problems. All right, things start to go wrong with the human body over time if these categories are not met. So say you do nothing but your strength training, you just do nothing but heavy carry, and you do running, but you never move fast and you never express your upper body with some sort of velocity, you're going to develop tightness in the shoulders, tightness in the pectoral, lack of mobility in your thoracic. Maybe you're going to develop some knee problems because if you did more sprint jump, you can do better running because you can absorb and recoil kinetic energy more efficiently. And it goes the other way around. If you do nothing but sprint and say you do nothing but throw punch and do nothing but sprinting, and you do no heavy carry, you do no strength, you can also run into more problems with the body. Your tissue cannot keep up with the amount of velocity, can't keep up with the amount of sprinting, the amount of jumping. You develop tendonitis, jumper's knee. You just don't have enough strength and protection against the kinetic forces of sprint jump. Okay? And yeah, so that's basically what I wanted to cover. What is training? So just to kind of recap everything. Training is artificial stimulation, right? And artificial stimulation creates repeated adaptation. Now, the human body has 4 mechanisms that it runs on. These are survival mechanisms. We got heavy carry, sprint, jump, throw, punch, and running. So artificial stimulation covers one, if not all, simultaneously or individually, the 4 mechanisms of the human body. And when one gets neglected or one gets overtrained, the human body can start running into issues because our primitive lifestyle involved all 4 of these categories to be expressed in a balanced way. You're going to be running every once in a while. You're going to be heavy carrying every once in a while. You're going to be sprinting every once in a while. You're going to be throwing and punching every once in a while. Now, because we're artificially stimulated to such heights in modern society, a lot of these mechanisms get neglected. All right. Some people will only train just one, right? They'll be like a marathon runner and they'll never do strength. And that's why they're always in pain, because their body's not strong enough to keep up, because you're not allowing the body to express the mechanisms that it needs. You're just forcing it into one mechanism. That can create problems. Or if you just heavy weightlift, everyone knows bodybuilders do not move well. Power lifters usually don't move well and they tend to be in a lot of pain, right? So I hope this makes sense. You can use this model, at least use this kind of understanding to filter in the information you see when it comes to different training categories, or different training philosophies, different sports performance brands, all that kind of shit, and maybe this will kind of help you understand a little bit more about what's going on behind the curtain instead of kind of getting stuck on, okay, is this going to work? Does this not work? Because we're very bilateral thinkers. Here's another thing to consider. Human beings are bilateral thinkers, right? We usually think in right, wrong, red, blue, yes, no. And it has to do with the fact that we have 2 eyes and 2 hemispheres in our brain, so we bilaterally like to create things into a certain category, chaos and order, okay? Training is not that simple. Training is not right or wrong, and you'll hear a lot of this and you'll probably think a lot of this. Oh, is it wrong to do this type of training and wrong to do that type of training? If I just do heavy carry, is that wrong? Or do I need... None of it is right or wrong. That is not a thing. There's no logic when it comes to the human body. All right? It's because logic is something we developed. There's just laws of nature. Okay? So when you look at this, think of it as, am I doing this right? Is this training wrong? All you got to think about is this artificial stimulation going to help me express the categories I need to execute for my sport? Okay, that's one way to look at it. Second way to look at it is this artificial stimulation, is it going to cover all the different bases? And if I like to lean into one of these mechanisms, it's going to come with some pros and cons. That's it. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's just pros and cons, because everyone has a right to choose what they want to do with their body. Okay, so like we said, we'll kind of go over it again. If we're doing nothing but throw punch, right? Category number 3, upper body velocity. If we're doing nothing but throwing shit and punching shit, guess what? You're going to be really good at throwing and punching. That's some of the pros. You're going to over adapt. You're going to have repeated adaptation on category 3. Some of the cons, is that it's going to wear your shit down. You are eventually going to break down because we are limited. We are made of water and flesh. We break down. All right. As best as training can help reduce that, we're inevitably on the way out no matter who you are. You know, this is a one-way trip, baby, and we all fall apart and die at the end of it. All right. So I hope that makes sense. I hope this kind of creates like a little clarity and also gives me a chance to teach some of my thoughts, how my mind works. And like I said, none of this shit is fact. This is just my own understanding of what I have been seeing, trying to observe, and try to explain it in a way, you know, maybe that's a little simpler for you guys to understand, right? Because this shit can be very complex. All right.